Once again, I'd like to remind all of you to kindly place your cell phones to the silent mode so that we may begin. Thank you. Vanakkam Vandanam, Suswagatam Namaskaram, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Airtel, Shastra University, and the New Indian Express, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the day 2 of ThinkEDU Conclave 2014. I can see that all of you are bright and shiny, and I'm hoping that we're all back refreshed for yet another power-packed day, because we've got a fantastic line of speakers who are waiting to address you on various interesting topics. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with the first panel discussion. The topic for the first panel discussion will be Education Frees Women and Threatens Class and Caste. May I request the chairperson, Mr. Shankar Iyer, eminent author and analyst, to please join me on stage. We're also very pleased to have here with us our panelists for this particular session. Srimati Smriti Irani, Vice President, Bharatiya Janata Party. Mr. Rajiv Gowda, Professor, IIM Bangalore and Congress spokesperson. Mr. T.K. Ranganajan, Member of Parliament, CPIM. Srimati Kavita Kalvakuntla, Founder, Telangana Jagriti. A warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our first set of panelists. I'd like to take you through the detail of the panel discussion, the finer details that is. We will begin with the chairperson addressing the audience, and then we will move forward to each one of the panelists. They may choose to make a PowerPoint presentation, or they may address you from the chair. Moving forward, there will be a group discussion that will ensue, and as you know, the last few minutes will be a quick Q&A session with the audience. I now hand over the proceedings to our chairperson, Mr. Shankar Iyer. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Education frees women and threatens class and caste. So the no-brainer really is that we need to educate women to end. This is an issue where the cause is also the consequence. There are many quotes: you educate a man, you educate a man, you educate a woman, you educate a generation. In 1843, an American author had said, if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. So we know this for some time, that women need to be educated. But has that happened? If you look at the numbers, and I'm going to just run some numbers by you. Every day in India, 200 children die of malnutrition. Women die at childbirth. We have a dowry problem. Despite many acts, and even the more recently passed act, we have issues of sexual assault. All of this come down to the crucible of education and how we educate our people. We need to get more women into school, more children into school. But if 18% of schools have no toilets, 28% have no toilets for girls, 10% have no drinking water, 60% of schools are not electrified, how does a parent, how do parents feel safe sending their children to school? But I must say, things are improving a bit. In 1951, female literacy rate was 8.8%. In 2011, female literacy is 65%. So there has been a great improvement, there is change happening. But the change is not enough. And it's not enough because still this domain is run by a mindset that is patriarchal, that is in some sense misogynist, some sense male-oriented. When I was outside discussing this subject with Mr. Chawla, one of the thoughts that occurred to us was that if education frees women, why hasn't it liberated men who have a higher education literacy level than women? And that is something I'm going to leave that to the two ladies in the panel. And Rajiv Gowda will have a tough time defending that. The format of this session, I think each of you, I would request you to make opening remarks about 5 to 7 minutes. And then we will open it to the floor so that you have more interaction with the students and the people here. And that way we can take the subject ahead. And while we will discuss the problems, I hope there will be very prescriptive, pragmatic solutions also that could be presented. And before I end, I wanted to leave one on a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. Of all the evils for which man has made himself responsible, none is so degrading, so shocking, or so brutal as his abuse of the better half of humanity, the female sex. May I invite, in terms of seniority, Mr. Rangarajan to please come and speak first. Thereafter, we will have one lady, and then Rajiv. And Smriti, I will ask you to speak last, if that's okay with you. We've seen her in many avatars. She's passed through many role changes, Saas, Bahu, Sansad, activist. But I don't know whether many of you watch the parliament channels. She's one of the more effective debaters in parliament. So I'm hoping she will bring into some more stuff. And Rajiv, all the studies that you've done in social indicators will come into play here. May I now invite Mr. Rangarajan, please, to come. Or you could speak from there. Yeah. If you can speak from there also, it's fine.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this interesting education-free women and children's class and caste. Of course, it's a provocative reading. I would like to quote the script of Manu. It says, a woman must remain under the care of the father in childhood, under the care of her husband when married, and in the old age under the care of the son, implying dependence of woman on male protector. Centuries have passed. Even today, we are able to get only 2010 statistics revised. 48% women are literate, and if they have knowledge to read and write. This being so, the percentage of graduates among women will be much lower, leaving the vast percentage of women from realm of higher education, in spite of some national policies empowering women. What kind of social change we can expect? So the next question, my first point is, education is not sufficiently included in women in general rational thinking, scientific temper, scientific world outlook, leave alone men. The National Curriculum Framework, released in 2000, while emphasizing girls' education, states, quote, it will be the most appropriate to bring to recognize and nurture best features of each gender in the best Indian tradition. Mind the words, the best Indian tradition. Now I hope you will link it with the Manusmriti. I quote while I started my speech, even today the spirit of Manu is in the mind of vast section of people. This brings being value of education formulate, years of girls' education, popular perception, social development by means of education, denotes lower fertility, better child rating. This is being the situation in India. What will be the net result of education? I leave it to your judgment. Let us also look the situation of most advanced developed country, USA. In 2011, outnumbers men master degree 1 lakh and bachelor degree 14 lakhs. spite of higher education, women are increasingly subjected to domestic violence and sexual harassment. And the recession, women lost more jobs than men. And surprising thing about USA, in the more than 2 centuries of their polity, so far no women occupied the post of the president. Now coming to the point of education for women will threaten the caste system. Yes, it is to a small extent, and it's a good beginning. The educated and employed women, in some cases, here and there defy the will of their parents, defy the norms of the structure entire of the caste marriage. But another thing is happening. In Tamil Nadu, I can quote, the incident of casteist forces opposed inter-caste marriages. Venture destroy the entire village. Bridegroom belongs to the scheduled caste. The pity is the government is not able to move an inch forward in support of the progressive marriages. This is being apathy of the inter-caste marriage couple. The rate of suicide interest, caste couples are increasing day by day. Next is the prevalence of untouchability, even among the educated class. This is a sad situation in spite of the improved educational population. The question of women's education threatening class is to me childish. First, which class you mean? If it means the ruling class or capitalist, in Western countries, which you have the vast masses of educated women, never pose danger to the system. Further, history shows that Soviet Russia or China, Vietnam system has changed by the people of that country, and it has no relation with women's education. If women's education threatens class, in our country caste, then Karl Marx has to rewrite his Das Kapital. Finally, let us understand the system in our country which contributes prevailing situation. Even today, we have capitalist system. Along with that, we have a capitalist system. In Western countries, feudal system was destroyed totally and destroyed by the emerging capitalist system. The feudal system in India preserved the old system even today. That's why we could see child marriage, female inflate, dowry system, subjection of women to men. The capitalist system never wants to abolish this, nor wants to comfort this. Both these systems have one thing in common, namely accumulation of wealth and passing it to the heirs of the male child. Along with this system, survives you can be the rest assured. There is no threat to any system, even if the entire population in India are postgraduate. While I have given the pessimistic view, there are positive features in our constitution. Given equal rights to women, no discrimination on ground of sex, equal opportunity in employment, equal pay, etc. Finally, while constitution look forward to implement progressive policies, the contradiction emanating from the feudal capitalist forces do not allow policies to be implemented. It is a pity that the ruling class, which leaves the favor of these forces, never bothered to implement the same because of their ideology. It is the left and democratic forces which has the determination to wipe out these forces can only implement these progressive policies, and being emanate from a woman. This increasing enrollment of girl child in education, another positive feature. True, education empowers women, but need to be orient itself towards an ideology for changing the system. Let us hope for the better. We shall overcome the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rangarajan. That was perfect 7 minutes. I would like to invite Kavita now. As a young person, you can hold the past responsible for a lot of the ills and maybe prescribe. We will see on the content.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you, Indian Express, for having me here. And sticking to the current topic, do I believe that education frees women? I do. And do I believe that it threatens class and caste? Definitely it does. I would like to bring your focus onto one issue. One particular girl from a Dalit background, from a very poor background in the Uttar Pradesh. Her father was a employee in the government post office, very poor background. The family had sons and daughters. Sons were sent to a private school. The girl child was sent to a low-performing government school. Yes, but she did attend the school. She went through the school. She has gone through the college, completed her graduation. And now we know who the daughter is, but we do not know who the sons who went to the private school. We know her, and she is none other than Mayawati, who is one of the most popular politicians in India today. Even though a girl was discriminated, was subject to discrimination in the young age, she did stick through the schooling, and she made a success out of it. See, the idea is, if at all we get a chance, if at all women of India get a chance to prove themselves, we have always excelled. Not only Mayawati, there are many cases like Kalpana Chawla. She was from a very, very humble background in Haryana. Like Pratibha Patil, like Sarojini Naidu. Many, many women who were ever given a chance have always excelled. You can actually take the list of past 10 years IAS, IPS, UPSC exam results. We've always seen girls surpassing men. So idea is not, the content is not basically about if the girls can do anything or not, do they have talent or not, can they prove themselves, or will they be subject to discrimination. It's not about that. It is about, are we giving them a chance or not? See, if one parent determined can send somebody to school, somebody like Kalpana Chawla, her mother was very determined to send her to school. She became an astronaut in NASA. So if the governments can be determined to send our girl children to school, I'm sure a lot of girls from the rural background in India, they'll definitely make it very big in life. And when I mean if the governments are determined, what I mean is, they have to be taken care from the womb to the tomb. They should feel secure. They should be welcomed in the family. I have an NGO. I run an NGO from past 7 years. I've been in touch with the rural parts of India. Wherever I go, if at all we preach them saying, to a person who is actually living on a daily wages, if we tell them, why don't you send your children to school? They simply ask me, paisa kaun dega, ma'am? Kaun leke aayega? Whatever the money the child gets, who's going to reimburse me that money? So I'm proposing, since there are many policy makers who can actually think and make a difference, India being a very diverse country, we have many states, many cultures. Each state has its unique scheme for, the empowerment of women, or Balika Yojana, some Nari Yojana, or some or the other populist scheme. I would say, particularly in case of women education, why don't we all come together? Why don't, as one nation, we have one scheme for girls? And, let us start by incentivizing the families. Let us start incentivizing families. A family, whoever is welcoming a girl child, let us incentivize them. On the birth of a girl child, let us incentivize them. Then let us incentivize them at every stage. Whenever you get an immunization shot, you give her some money. Whenever you send her to the primary school, give the family some money. It is possible. Government of Andhra Pradesh has started some scheme on similar lines. Of course, it has its own flaws and practical difficulties in implementation. But this is very much possible, and investing in the girl child systematically for 15 to 18 years, making sure that she stays through the high school, which is the most difficult part. In the beginning, Mr. Shankarayar had mentioned that, not many schools have good sanitation facilities. Not many schools have drinking water facilities. So a lot of the girls drop out due to the security issues also. So I would say, let us make an effort. Let us invest on the girl child systematically. And all of you must be thinking, how much? Not too much. In 15 to 18 years, if you can invest 82,000 to 1.5 lakhs on a girl child, you can make a major difference. Why do I say this? Because every UN report in past 60 years has been continuously saying a 1% rise in women's literacy is 3 times more likely to reduce deaths in children than a 1% rise in the number of doctors. Indian government this year has made a decision that they are going to increase the MBBS seats for, by 10,000 more. And I've just studied a little bit. How much does Indian government spend on making one doctor? 1.2 crores on making one doctor. And if you are making so many doctors, and if it is not making any difference in reducing your either infant mortality rate or your maternal mortality rate, or it is not making a difference in controlling HIV/AIDS, or it is not making any difference in producing well-nourished, nutritious, healthy young Indians what are we adding to the nation? I'm simply saying, I might sound very idealistic, but I'm simply saying investing systematically in a girl child, coming up with a universal program throughout the country which is uniform across the states, because every state has a different literacy rate. Like Kerala is probably on the top, and Mizoram, Kerala are 90-95% of literacy rate. But then rest of them are lagging behind. Why should that happen? India as a nation should sail together. And tomorrow, if we want to become a superpower, I believe we should invest in women. And I would really like to quote Mr. UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. He said, study after study has taught us that there is no tool for development more effective than the empowerment of women. But all said and done, once we invest in women, we are sure that we are going to have a better society. But whether we invest them or not is definitely a call of the governments, and I think I really don't like this factor. I'm not into active politics, but whenever another government changes, the previous schemes or programs are all scrapped, and they come up with something new, some popular scheme. So this disturbs the development at least, in the core segments. So I would sincerely like to make a request and appeal to all the political parties through your platform, that, at least for the girl child, come up with a uniform scheme, which will be uniform throughout the country, and invest in them systematically. I'm sure if not, anything in return, but women definitely deserve that dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. That was very good. We've got two very good suggestions from her. One, have a universal scheme for girl child education all over India. And the second, a much more sophisticated idea of incentivizing families with girl children. Rajiv, a lot of issues have been thrown up here. Mr. Rangarajan spoke about ideology. There is the issue of the past baggage. Kavita spoke about some solutions. Yeah. Is it about ideology? Is it about where do we stand on the principle of equality which we assured everybody when we became a republic? Where is the promise of education that was made? So what are your prescriptive thoughts? So we can take this forward then.
Sure. Thanks, Shankar. Good morning. Equality of opportunity, as Shankar has mentioned, is something enshrined in the preamble of our Constitution. How does that parlay work out in terms of practical action? We look at numerous interventions along the way, especially in terms of reservation policies, etc. And each of them have had huge impacts in terms of creating access to the education system, breaking caste and class barriers, giving opportunities for women as well. So there's no argument about the premise of this particular panel. If you want to take my own case, I still have first cousins who are farmers, who till the fields. But my father and uncle were the first graduates who walked miles to school. And in my case, one generation later, my brother and I are both Ivy League graduates. Just in terms of, that's the kind of social mobility that education can provide. But I want to take you to an IIM classroom. Many years ago, before Arjun Singh introduced the reservation for other backward classes, I teach subjects like India and business, government, society. So there was a session on Indian society. And so we just did a quick survey inside the class, a quick census. And we found that, say, 1/4 of the class belonged to the reserved categories. Another quarter of the class consisted of South Indian Brahmins. Another quarter of the class were North Indian business community. And the remaining 25% were people from all over India. I didn't focus on that. I focused on the fact that we had only 20% women, less than that, right? Now, if an IIM has essentially a level playing field exam in the form of the Common Admission Test, the CAT, why do we have these kinds of skewed results later on, right? And when you look at that, then it suggests to you that there's something else going on. It's not just the formal system that we put in place, it is the culture, the background, the ideology of the society itself, which comes in the way. When I talk about that, immediately when we discuss why women are so underrepresented, people would immediately talk about the lack of aspiration, where people would talk about social pressures to, get married and settle down, things of those sorts, right? And those are the intangibles that come in the way of education really breaking caste and class and gender divides, right? Now, I do want to point out one or two other things. There are solutions to this. Okay? We have to pay attention to the fact that we shouldn't just focus on the formal aspect of education. We have to nurture soft skills. People will succeed if they have the other capabilities that enable them to progress. In business, that's what we're teaching people. Those who succeed often come from backgrounds where they have tacit knowledge. They've grown up in environments where business is already in their blood, right? People grow up and succeed partly because of the networks, the peer groups that they're part of, where the opportunities are made available to them, the aspirations and peer pressure helps. Now, this can be cultivated. Years ago, I went to Narayan Murthy and told him that, look, you have to help cultivate an outstanding class of Dalit entrepreneurs in the field of IT. And so along with a school called the Indian Triple IT across from Infosys, they created a program for outstanding Dalit engineering graduates. And after 1 year extra, after college, each of them turns out to be so much more capable and confident and out there in terms of going out and making an impact.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Let me just
Is
finish
there
up.
a ratio of women to men in that batch that they produced?
I can't recall that, but I can tell you what happened in my class, right? Yeah, there were fewer women, absolutely. There's no argument on that. So how do you cultivate all these other features, these soft skills, the networks, those capabilities? So I would urge internships right through college itself, the opportunity to go out there and learn about what it takes to succeed in a professional environment. I would also urge, so this has been one of the impacts of IT BPO. When people come and say, I can't send my child to a call center, I say, send them. They'll learn how to be professional. They'll learn how to, be responsible. And before you know it, they'll be empowered enough to go out and do something on their own because there are enough role models out there. The other point is what we miss in the larger society is something called mentoring. We rarely have someone we can turn to who can guide us, who can say, these are the ways in which these fields work, these fields don't work, etc. I myself have nurtured an organization called Mentor Together that's working with really underprivileged young women. And so these are interventions, work experience, mentoring. The Dalit Chamber of Commerce is going to have more of an impact on breaking caste and class barriers than any amount of reservations will have. Right? Because they are now role models and support systems, right? So those are the things. Beyond the hardcore of the education establishment, the formal establishment, we need to create the environment, we need to create the institutions, we need to change people's minds and hearts to make these changes possible. As Mr. Rangarajan has pointed out, ideology in terms of a strong commitment to this really makes a difference. Kerala, where the communists have had a very significant role historically, is a good example of tremendous empowerment and breaking of caste and class barriers.
Thank you, Rajiv. Smriti, we've still not crossed the barrier on the social mindset issue. We've not got a prescription for that. Rajiv had a very good thought in the sense of mentoring. Probably a non-partisan system of mentoring programs for girl children, for women might work. I'll leave the thoughts to you, and maybe you could give us some more prescriptions on this gap that everybody says Kerala did well, Mizoram did well. Why do some states do well? Is the social mindset there different? Why is Tamil Nadu employing more women? Is the social mindset different there? Uttar Pradesh may have had Mayawati as chief minister twice, but the state of women education in that state doesn't reflect the role of that leadership. And neither does us having Mrs. Gandhi as Prime Minister maybe 3 decades back reflect on our own literacy situation. So where does this lie?
Thank you, Shankar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I've always believed to repeat what someone says needs common sense, but to challenge it, one needs education. So it's very rare for Rajiv and me, possibly, ideologically, to come to a similar conclusion. But Rajiv spoke about mentoring. Let me begin from the basics. Rajiv pointed out as to how an environment prepares a child, male or female, as to what kind of a path they shall choose in the future. He gave an example of children being brought up in a business family, and the same reasoning is used for children from political families. Very recently, I heard President Obama say that let success not be dependent on the accident of birth. Let it be determined by the scope of your dreams. And I think that is what women in our country need. I, the rebel that I am, will not conform to the topic this morning. I will not say that educating women means threatening class and caste. I think for too long in our country, a fear psychosis has been created that if you educate a woman, she will challenge social order. I think what needs to be emphasized through today's conclave is educating women is empowering a nation. Let's begin from the basics. Mr. Rangarajan spoke about, and so did you in the opening remarks, about how now female literacy rate is 65% in our country. What is also interesting is when you define literacy, what is literacy to people? Ka, kha, ga, ga, A, B, C, D. अपनी भाषा में अक्षर लिखना, उसे बोलना और लोगों तक अपनी बात को पहुंचाना. But today, if you look at secondary level education in our country, you find that 71% tribal girls drop out of school. 54% Dalit girls drop out of school. And what is the first reason for making a girl drop out of school? Ghar ka kaam kaun karega? If you look at the census details of 2011, you will find that in our country, over 22% households do not have a source of water within the premises. In fact, the source of water is 500 meters and away. सुबह लड़की उठती है तो उसे क्या करना है? पानी लेकर आओ, क्योंकि पिताजी को, भाई को, माँ को काम पे जाना है, रसोई बनानी है. So you have 22% households in India where it's a compulsion for the woman to step out just to fetch water for the rest of the day. 7 out of 10 homes in our country do not have a toilet. So those people who speak about lack of toilets in school, well, there's lack of toilets at home. We talk about women being restricted to homes क्योंकि घर का खाना कौन बनाएगा? And today the tragedy of our country is that in this nation in 2014, 2/3 of our rural households have women going out to fetch firewood so that they can cook at home. So the beginnings of the journey of a woman to on the path of education is confronted with so many challenges. How do we overcome those challenges? We need to ask ourselves as a nation, is building a school enough? What is extremely important is keeping those girls in school so that they can go through their secondary level education, they can go to college, and then yes, they can be mentored by leaders like Rajiv. I think what is significant, Kavita spoke about this idea of having a national policy for girl-child education. 2 years ago in Parliament, I spoke about the need for a national policy for female infanticide. Every year, over 1 crore girls in our country go missing. Why? Because we kill them in our wombs. We do not have that policy today. I support what Kavita said today. I supplement it with data which came out in 1996. Where a cross-national survey was done of 72 countries, and it was found, Kavita, this is to supplement what you said with regards to the UN report. It was found that if governments in 72 countries, you spoke about Indira Gandhi 3 decades ago, if governments in 72 countries in 1975 had put in a lot of work to double the number of doctors, then infant deaths would have come down by a mere 2% by 85. But if those same governments had invested in secondary education for girls, infant deaths in 1985 in 72 countries across the world would have come down by 64%, which quantifies, in terms of statistics, how much more beneficial it is to educate our girls. You spoke about violence against women. Shockingly, what does education do? It helps you be gainfully employed. Our data today says that only 50% men in our country are productively employed. Only 25% women are productively employed. 90% of the unorganized labor sector is women. Why? Because they can be denied medical rights, they can be denied benefits, and they work at lower wages. Not that women in organized sectors have it better. Out of all the CEOs in all the top-rated companies, only 11% are women, and that too, they work at a lesser salary than men. But when you look at these statistics, you realize that what does education do? It helps you be gainfully employed and does stop violence. There was a study done which shows that if women who are gainfully employed go and own property, they are less prone to be physically and psychologically violated as compared to women who just have a menial job. You'd be shocked, Shankar, if a woman owns a property, 49% of physical violence would be lessened. 84% of psychological violence would be lessened as compared to women who have merely a job and who merely go by their day because they are not that educated. So I think that Kavita spoke about a UN report just a few days ago. The All Global Monitoring Report of the UN said that India contributes 37% of the global total of illiteracy. It also said that those who are educated, rich women, they have achieved universal adult franchise, but those women who are poor, who don't have access to education, will not achieve universal adult franchise at least till 2080. So I think that instead of saying that educating women will threaten class or caste, let's resolve together and go back from this conclave with the idea that when you educate women, you truly empower a nation.
So the question then, Smriti, just to take this forward. We know that education brings down malnutrition, it brings down violence against them, it adds to the GDP, it adds to social stability, it adds to a more diverse work and political environment. Why aren't we able to cross that? Does the fault lie in the society or does the fault lie in the systems?
I think Mr. Rangarajan, he is a senior of mine in Rajya Sabha. He began with Manusmriti. And we often fall back when we can't explain our own inadequacies on our cultural baggage. I think that we need to recognize that India did have the privilege, historically, of even having us like Maitri and Gargai. That a nation which passed the sexual harassment bill in 2013 is a civilization which in Kautilya's Arthashastra prescribed punishment for sexual harassment of women at work thousands of years ago. So where did the gap come? When did we suddenly, a nation which respected women not only in our temples but also in society, when did we fall short? I think, Shankar, this conclave, I came here not to fix a blame for the past, but to fix a course for the future. So I feel that all the institutions, all the dignitaries who are here in the conclave, one would serve the cause of women well if we can, like Kavita said, incentivize how to keep girls back and get secondary level education. And I think once we do that, building of schools, like I said, is not enough. We need to do those programs where we see that we're equally investing not only our money, and I will differ on one issue here. We presume that making a policy, allocating funds, is the only way of getting things delivered. I would like to attract your attention to the fact that in the last budget, we had a girl-child specific district plan for which 15 crore rupees was budgeted. As we speak, the Principal Accounts Office of the Ministry of Women and Child Development Department says not a penny out of it has been spent. So I think that one needs to not only ensure that equal amount of money is allocated for the cause of education of women, but also there needs to be a system which ensures that that money is put to good use and that policy is implemented, especially at the grassroots.
But that's very evident from the way, I mean, if you look at the last 60 years of, we had all the right intent and all the right fundamental rights, but we haven't managed to carry it through primarily because the society didn't put pressure for their implementation. At this point, I would like to sort of open up the floor for questions. And I would request all of you to first identify yourself and try and ask a question. Vaidya.
Namaskar, I'm Dr. Padmaja. In our country, the stream of fine arts and performing arts education has not become a well-organized sector unlike commerce or science. Where there is theory, there is no practice. Where there is practice, there is no theory. And where there are both, there are no career opportunities. So if steps are taken in this direction, would it not improve the holistic development of girl child?
So who's the question addressed to? Is there a question there? Who would you like the question to be answered by?
Ms. Smriti Irani.
Coming from the field of art, I completely agree with what you say. I have found, surprisingly, actually not to my surprise, that not many women get into the role of being of researching, especially not only in the field of art and culture, but also scientific research. It is extremely saddening when I see the Bhabha Atomic Research Center and I see that 75% of the administrative staff is made of women, but of the scientific research staff, only 25% of that is comprised of women. I completely agree with you that art and culture should not be looked upon as just a hobby, should be looked upon as a well-defined career. And for that to be given that kind of a respectful placement vis-a-vis students and institution, yes, we need to also carve out these specific programs to encourage more and more youngsters, and specifically women, to come into the field of art and culture.
Rajiv, you had something to add?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on this myself. Part of this has to do with societal attitudes. You know, in South India, for example, we emphasize engineering and medicine, partly because of our thirst for security. In any other field, there is less security. These are riskier professions. So as the economy improves, as you have more and more opportunities, whether on TV or on stage or elsewhere, then you will find more people possibly willing to take this chance. Otherwise, we are much more focused on, let's take care of our basics. And I think, you know, government programs are one thing, but more sponsors, more companies, more people nurturing these domains of creative professions, then more opportunities will certainly arise. More people will want to go out there and express their talents through these fields.
Ma'am, just to take, sorry I'm interjecting, just to take what Rajiv is saying to a different level. Unfortunately in our country, out of the 4 lakh engineering students who come out of institutions, only 2 lakh end up getting a job. That means being an engineering student is not a sure-shot way of having a secure job as well. So I supplement what Rajiv is saying, that apart from government policies, private sector, if it encourage more and more positions for women vis-a-vis the field of art and culture, you will see a growth in that as well.
At this point, I would like to ask the panel.
Can I add a quick point to it? The ma'am who asked the question was mentioning about art and culture being a part of the curriculum. In China, I believe Kung Fu is a part of the curriculum. I mean, every child, girl or boy, has to learn Kung Fu to pass out of the basic education or whatever. That is because as one nation, they have one particular sport identified. But India being culturally so diverse, you know, one will learn Kuchipudi, one learns Bharatnatyam, one learns something else. So supporting a kind of or a format of art or culture becomes a little difficult, but that has to be really thought about. Definitely it helps in the holistic development of a child, but in India it is really difficult to achieve or, you know, that consensus on identifying one art format. So
I want to place a controversial sort of idea here at this point. The issue of opportunity keeps popping up, saying that women, girl children don't get opportunities first to go to school, then when they get educated, they don't get the jobs. When they get the jobs, they don't break the ceiling. And when they're in politics, very rarely they make it to the top. So just on the basic level of the opportunity for employment, because I believe that economic empowerment is more is a first principle to get social and political empowerment. So I would like to ask all 4 of you to sort of give a yes or no thing. Do you think it's a good idea to have a kind of reservation for women in private sector or in government and in government? We talked about 33% reservation in parliament for women. Why not start with economic empowerment? I know it will militate the idea of equality for some feminists. It also sort of rubs into Article 14 of the Constitution. But a yes and no from 4 of you. Rajiv?
Yes, I'm fine with it.
Mr. Rangarajan? Yes. Smriti?
Reservation for women in private sector?
In public, in government and in private sector, a certain so that they get the opportunity to get into the employment.
Well, I completely support reservation for women in the public sector vis-a-vis political reservation for them. But I think, Shankar, one needs to also highlight that when industry comes together with government on specific policies, they can contribute to welfare of women even in the field of education. I have seen that as a reality in the state that I represent. We have had a program called Mission Mangalam, wherein women are encouraged to save for the first 6 months. Then these women through self-help groups are linked to banks. Then these women then are trained by corporate India, who are given job work. Close to 25 lakh women are doing business worth 1,700 crores and investing their money in the education of their girls. I would rather have more and more private sector players come out and do this than compel them or shove them against a wall and say, well, you better do this for women otherwise. So I would rather that I have private sector contribute towards increasing competence of women and making sure that these women are strengthened enough to get gainful employment.
So not everybody is going to sort of get into the entrepreneurship thing. So, I mean, I'm talking about basic employment for in government and in private sector. We talk about reservations for Dalits, we talk about reservation for
I'm talking
others.
about reservation for women vis-a-vis political reservation so that they can be politically represented. And I think why we, all of us, irrespective of our political ideology and party, Shankar, you will find all women across all political parties come together on political reservation for women, because we have seen for ourselves that when women come into positions of power, through their work, they have actually increased the qualitative life of other women and men around them.
Shankar, we need this until we have a critical mass, until we have enough role models, until the environment within the workplace, public or private, is transformed, much more gender sensitive and equal.
I would rather have that private sector impose equal pay for equal work.
Okay, so we have 2.5 points there. Kavita?
Yeah, I support reservation in the private sector as well, at least to a basic extent, because some women need to find space in the private sector also. So apart from the government, private sector also should have a reservation.
So we have 3 prescriptive suggestions as of now. 1 national scheme for women, 1 incentivizing the family of girl child, and if Smriti Irani agrees to vote for it, reservation for women in private and
Why
public
are you
jobs.
shying away, a typical man shying away from equal pay for equal work?
No, Smriti, the point is, it's a sequence. Only when you get there will you get the equal pay. If you're not employed, you're not going to get the equal pay.
So you're telling me that you're against women getting that substantial pay
I can't
because
go
they're
home
working
if
hard.
I do that.
This almost sounds like the news hour I have with Arnab every night.
1 minute. Right there.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Smriti's observation. You mentioned Gargi and Maitreyi. We are in a country that, not only worships women God, but women as gods. Now to the question, I'll just pick it up from where Mr. Shankar left. The word freedom is open-ended from the topic. So if you go to define the consequence of the freedom, and education is a tool to define the consequence of freedom, would you like an education that provides women freedom to be rights-driven or respect-driven? Respect for women or rights for women? Because the prescription that Mr. Shankar gave is rights for women. Which one would you prefer? Respect for women or rights for women?
He's trying to pit the panel and the chairperson now.
No. So you're asking me which one would I rather have from a man like you, respect or my rights? And I'm saying that I lead my life irrespective of that question put to me, for my life is not determined by your outlook towards me as a woman.
I don't see the reason why you have to choose between the two. That's one part. The other is, when you think about freedom, Amartya Sen has put it well. He said true freedom is when each and every individual can live up to his or her potential. So remove any barriers, whether they are in the mind, in society, in terms of opportunity. Once you do that, once everyone has a chance to fulfill their God-given talents, then you will have achieved that.
It's interesting.
I agree with Gowda. The point is, wherever we assemble here, we talk things in favor of women's right, everything. When we go home, or when we see the society, we are not practicing that. That is the problem in India. We don't practice it. We don't allow our own women, children, we don't give them right, we don't give them opportunity. But slowly India is moving forward. Today we are able to see women pilots, women doctors, women scientists. But this progress is very slow. But still the right is more important. The male chauvinism should come down. Unless I correct myself. Sometimes it happens. When I shout my wife, in the evening I will realize and I will go and take excuse for us. That male chauvinism is there. That is everybody. Unless you correct yourself, you cannot correct the society.
I'm going to move away from this.
We all talk loudly this type of gathering. When you go to the work, when you go to the house, when you go to the work spot, all males are differently they behave. Unless the males are changing their attitude, nothing will change. The real thing is male has to change.
It's interesting that freedom here on the panel and in the term of the question is being framed by a lot of men. Rajiv spoke about Amartya Sen. It's interesting, Swami Vivekananda was once approached by a few men and they said, Swamiji, we have to sit and think about what to do with women in this country. So Swamiji said, what do you have to think? He said, no, let 8 or 9 of us sit together and decide a policy for women so that they can be emancipated. Swamiji turned around and told those 8 men that who are you to tell women of this country what to do? Just educate them and then women in this nation have the ability to decide their own destiny. And I think that is what we need to leave with.
So we're back to the rights issue.
I was just wondering, if you had to ask the same question to Mr. Rajiv, would you give him a choice? Should I respect you or should I give you your rights? You know, why the question comes in terms of women? We need both. We deserve both. So I don't think that's a right question. Sorry.
See, I would like to bring to your thing that in a freedom struggle also, Balagangadhara Tilakar was very progressive in the freedom movement. He said, freedom is my birthright. He went for 6 years convicted. He was convicted for 6 years. But in the social life, he never wanted to raise the age of the marriage age of the child more than 7. It should be 7, she should be married. So all our progressive, politically progressive people are socially very, very backward. That still continues. So all the fault lies on the male chauvinism.
That is grey eminence for you, harsh truth about our society. I am been allowed to take 2 more questions, so I'm going to first take the questions and then roll the answers. I have to ask any women first. Yeah, that girl there. You'll have to identify yourself, ma'am. You're addressing a panel, you should.
My name is Pradeepta. I'm a student from Great Lakes Institute of Management. What I want to say is, you said that we have to actually have a reservation for women. Okay, but I don't think it is required. The reason, if you say that when I'm writing an exam, should I be given an opportunity as in terms of reservation to prove myself? I don't need that. I can compete with a man. Okay? Now, when you take job, you said you take business, government and society, sir. In business environment, the main issue that we see is when a woman performs really well, when she is authoritative, men below her, they say, okay, she's very rude. I mean, come on, she's the manager and she's very rude. At the same time, when a man does a really good job, they say, he's somebody. I mean, he's my idol. This mentality is what's creating so much of issue and not letting women progress. So I feel reservation is not going to solve. The problem is with the ideology, the mentality. The mentality changes, everything else falls into place.
So since I raised the issue of reservation, I should take that and say that all answers are born out of the context. You are entitled and in a way privileged because you are in this room and are able to ask that question. So you feel empowered to compete. There are millions of women there who can't go to school because their men won't let them go to school. That is the harsh truth of life. Last question, final question, please. Yes, the gentleman here.
Thank you. My name is Karunanidhi. I'm a physician. Again, the question to the PJB spokesperson. Madam, we have a university, Mother Teresa University, that is exclusively for women. Do you think that such universities, maybe if you come to power, that everywhere, all the states, one university like that will help us to improve the literacy? The other thing is nursing. We have IIM, we have IIT. We don't recognize nursing is a profession where women excel out, as the colleagues said, that is exclusively for women. So why don't we have Indian Institute of Nursing and recognize nursing as a profession, contribute to the welfare of other developing countries as well?
I completely second what you're saying, sir. I'm of the opinion, and this is what I should propose to my party seniors, that when we come to power, we ensure that in the field of education, we have not only more and more institutions which cater particularly to women's education, but also equally talk about skill development. Because in this country, when we speak about skill development, there is a presumption that it's about young men. So I completely second what you're saying, that with an increase in the number of ITI in states which are particularly designed to train women, specifically in the state that I represent, which is the state of Gujarat, we have seen increased productivity amongst women. We have not only seen increased productivity, but we've seen increased savings, and such mothers who are trained then go forth and invest in higher education for their own daughters, so that their daughters don't go through the struggle that they did. So I completely second what you say, and I shall propose the same to my senior leadership. Thank you.
Kavita?
I didn't.
Are you okay with the idea that has been proposed?
Yeah, definitely. Separate universities for women would help, and the vocational training or any support also would help. But then, as Smriti ma'am was repeatedly saying, any popular scheme that is announced is usually attributed to the male. So that has to change. That has to change, especially the skill development or any type of schemes in the Andhra Pradesh I have seen. Most of it are filled by men. So that has to change a little, and specific reservations now again come in place where women have to be given priority. That is what I'm talking.
Thank you very much. I appeal to all of you, a round of applause for a very good session.
Thank you all. I think we definitely have to give them a stronger round of applause, because this is a great kickstart to day 2 of the ThinkEDU Conclave and an invigorating session. I request our editorial director, Mr. Prabhu Chawla, to please join us on stage and hand over mementos to our panelists and our chairperson. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Shankar Iyer, Ms. Smriti Irani, Professor Rajiv Gowda, Mr. T.K. Rangarajan, and Ms. Kavita Kalvakuntla for joining us and making this day all the more interesting. Thank you. A quick photo opportunity before we let go of you.